But Brian Flanagan from Flanagan came over because I set up the Irish Refugee Council back in '92. I brought in Lockie Kennedy, who found it concern, and a Jesuit friend to do so, to get a bank loan, supply the furniture, buy the premises. But I got driven out of it because of people doing what you guys are doing, imposing on the Irish nation and imposing on this community. Does the local community have any rights whatsoever other than meeting in a hall like this? That's the first question. And I get set against the decision taken in February this year to increase the population of 1 million. Mr. Varadkar said we're going to have an extra 1 million people before 2040. And that's not going to come from the indigenous population. Where are they coming from? And is this decision taken at a higher level in Brussels? Because Brussels, we're informed by MEPs, are dead set on destroying community, nationalism and faith. Quite set on that, no question of it.
Can I ask you about the Irish Refugee Council? So if you start at the start, basically, how you got into it, and how you got out of it effectively. I'd love to know.
Well, I've been involved in what I regard as important issues over the years, and the way I got involved in the refugee situation was I was convalescing after a very serious accident, a car accident, which was a passenger, and in the Canaries, I picked up the Telegraph newspaper to read on the front page about refugees from Vietnam who had come across the water to Vietnam and were then caged in what looked like bunk beds, caged in bunk beds.
These were Christian refugees.
They were Catholic refugees, yeah. And apart from being Catholic, this was outrageous in this day and age, as I thought at the time. And I went back and made inquiries with the two major factories locally here, the Clubman, Amiga, and Fruit of the Loom. And they were both very keen on the idea of taking in perhaps about 50 workers between them. I set up various meetings which TDs attended, and I ended up speaking from the side of the bed at 8:15 in the morning to the whole of England through the BBC. They thought it was a rather interesting idea too. I mean, we were going to just integrate 50 families in the whole of any show. That didn't seem too much,
And that was you wanted to set up the council for that, and then maybe similar things in the future.
Well, it developed from that. We ran into a bit of xenophobia from people who were kind of anonymous. They wouldn't put their names to anything. But went on from there to a more general awareness of what the situation was with regard to refugees. And I had some friends that I contacted, a Jesuit friend, Alex Salmon, and another fellow, Lockie Kennedy, John O'Loughlin Kennedy, who was a founder of Concern, for which I had a high regard. And they very, very, very sportingly joined me in the setting up of the Catholic the Irish Refugee Council. I found the premises along the quays. I borrowed money from the bank. I supplied the table and chairs for the thing, and off we went.
Premises along the quays. Sorry,
yes.
To cut across here in Innishowen.
Oh, in Dublin.
In Dublin, okay.
Dublin, of course. This is national Irish Refugee Council. Right. So that was it, really. But I travelled up and down up and down that road to Dublin for lots of meetings. But eventually, I got swamped with people who wanted to use the council as a battering ram for a very aggressive agenda towards the government. What I was looking for was just to bring to a focus people's care for their fellow man abroad, wherever it was, and to do what we could within reason for them. We're not God; we can't do everything. The most dreadful things happen. Sure. What can I do about the World Trade buildings being bombed and so on? These are beyond me. But we can do something like bring refugees to Buncrana. Why not? We can handle a few refugees at our leisure, and it should be good crack getting to know them. But there'll be conditions and so on. They're not going to change us. We're going to assimilate them, and they bring something to the party. But they're certainly not going to have bring 4 wives to one woman, one man. Sorry, they're not going to do that, and they're not going to introduce hatred of anyone who's not Muslim or anything like that.
In other words, common sense, right?
Just what we've always been used to, common sense. Yeah.
So people, it's a mutual respect and it's a kind of it's an understanding. Yeah.
The freedom of religion is a basic human right. Yeah.
So you had these kind of what we're going to describe as common sense ideas. You wanted to help some people, but you also wanted, some basic integration and values and respect and all that.
Well, basically, I want to help them, whatever. But I mean,
sure,
you're a human being. You can only do so much.
How did that change? So when you've set up the Refugee Council, and then you have a different attitude. Was there a bit of friction between you and the organisation, or how did you end up coming away from it?
I found it I just abandoned it.
You abandoned it?
Yeah, I found it just totally. What's the word?
Disillusioning?
Not disillusioning. It was more. It was no longer congenial, and certainly I did not feel comfortable with. They were taking basically the dialectical approach, where they're going to oppose and tooth and nail whatever's proposed. They're going to oppose and try and get some resolution in between the synthesis. The thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. I don't agree with that at all. The truth. Go for the truth, neither more nor less. And what's common sense, as you say,
And did you was it just that you didn't like the way it was going and you just backed away, or was there any tension between? Like, what was it more just you said, okay, it's not my thing anymore? Do you know what I mean?
I can't quite recall now. I think
it's a while back.
Oh, it was back in '92. So it's 30 years ago. Frank Salmon continued in it, but Lockie had never really attended many meetings at all. I keep up. I just I was busy with my business, and I also had perhaps intervened at the same time. I opened a shop in Connecticut, in America. We were in a bit of a recession here, a shop in Brantford, Connecticut for a year. And I had to go over to launch that for a month, I can't really recall. I just dropped out of it basically, and it certainly wasn't congenial anyway. So I left it too.
And it's gone. Like now, it isn't just so. From what you described, you just kind of like you said, you took out a loan. It was a few individual people who wanted to help people, some vulnerable people from abroad. But now it's a behemoth financially and everything.
Is it?
Like,
I didn't know.
oh yeah, it's no, I don't want to say the wrong thing here, so I'm not going to make specific attributions, but as far as I can tell, they get a lot of government money, right? Okay. They are like most NGOs, so they unlike what you described from the past, they would have a huge staff and a lot going on.
I was the only one at the time. There was about maybe 10 used to come to the meetings. Where they came out of in Dublin, I don't know. They were friends of friends.
Right.
But I found it intolerable. So, like UCD, I wanted to be true to what I consider to be common sense.
Yeah, and it's I feel like with your you're sensitive to wanting respect for all people and to live in harmony together, and again common sense kind of stuff like that. But at the same time,
too much harmony. You want to have too.
Well, there we go. But you so I'll have played the clip from last night, your point of view last night for the people watching, so they'll know already. Like, you asked, do local communities have any rights?
Yes. Do they have any rights at all? Is it? And I think it came out the next question made it more clear. It's a done deal. We were told. No say whatsoever. This was just a public relations exercise last night in Moville. My son had problems with planning permission for a sign that had been up 15 years here at the outskirts. You need planning permission for a sign on the edge of the town, even after it's been up for 10 or 15 years. You don't need planning permission for 100 refugees from God knows where moving into your town, a town of only 1,100 people. My God, what's going on? This is ridiculous. And the TD there present, Charlie McConlogue, he reminded me of the famous children's poem, Loch an Var, which I learnt in Glasgow at school. This enterprising young warrior comes into to a wedding feast with his beloved marrying somebody else because the family didn't want him to marry, and he takes her for a dance,
And the famous line is, "While the bridegroom stood dangling his bonnet and plume." That's the way Charlie McConlogue struck me. Dangling his bonnet and plume while his bride was being whipped away from under his nose.
Yeah. Can you remind me which guy was he? He was obviously on the left or the right? Or?
He was about the middle, actually.
He was
a tall fellow. He spoke very well, but said nothing. He said, "Oh, I'm going to bring it to the minister's attention." He said,
Yeah.
"This is not the right way to be doing things." I thought my nemesis, Patrick McLaughlin, the Sinn Féin guy, well, I don't agree with him about anything. He was the only one who spoke properly last night and said, "Look, there should be a moratorium at least." Porrick, I would say Porrick was playing for votes there, you know. He's in the Senate, you know.
Yeah.
He lost his seat here. The people are not free to speak anymore. Like if you're stuck in perhaps in a TD's job or stuck in a county council job, you've got a mortgage perhaps, you've got all sorts of irons in the fire, and you as we say around here, you've got your hand in the dog's mouth, you know. Frankly, at my stage, I don't give a damn. I'm going to say it the way it is, and simple as that.
It is, yeah. And what I'm noticing very much so is there's a thing that sounds very innocent, but I don't think it is so innocent. In all these towns, you have Friends of Refugees.
Yes.
Now, that's not loosely meant. It's a specific organisation, right? And David Stanton has said himself, he's the Minister for Immigration and Integration and stuff. He's behind a lot of this. He said they specifically target towns to find people to do this. And what I notice is all the people in that, or a lot of the leaders in that, will exclude anyone who opposes it. And they will call them a racist and a hater and all this stuff. Like,
it was like a Nuremberg rally last night. The same people were clapping enthusiastically for all the pros at the same time. They're opening in the front as well, mostly along the back wall and at the front, along the side wall and at the front. But the locals got, and then the summary was unbelievable. It was like, for instance, like what is it out of George Orwell? Is it Newspeak or something?
Yeah.
You know, it was an edited summary. Oh, there were a few dissenting voices. There were plenty of dissenting voices, but they weren't referred to, apart from myself and one other.
Do the Catholic Church, because I know you're a devout Catholic, right?
Trying.
Yeah, you're trying. But like, would the church put a statement on this? Because it was the Church of Ireland. There was a reverend there who spoke on it. Is there any priest in the area, or?
The one priest that did attend was a very good friend of mine from Buncrana, actually, but he's very, very frail. He's had several major heart operations and more stents, I don't know, than a fuse box. Anyway, he didn't speak, and he very, very actually a retired professor, 30 years, held a chair in Lilith. Very, very gifted, clever man, but I say he could read them even better than me, and it was all an orchestrated thing. It was a total waste of time speaking up, and his health is very fragile at the moment.
It was kind of like a show trial, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It had that feel to it. And you had one man who I don't think he named himself, but he's from. Oh, where is it? I actually have it written down here. I'll find it in the meantime. It doesn't matter actually. He's from somewhere else in Donegal, right? And he suggested that maybe some of these asylum seekers could get into drug dealing and could be involved in that.
Yes.
And
very interesting guy.
And he didn't get too specific, but he seemed like a genuine guy.
Well, indeed he was. In fact, he himself admitted to the whole public there that he had been in drugs and been in drug dealing and in gangs. And then been trouble.
Was it that he was in gangs himself, or that he had worked
he had
with?
been in gangs. Yeah.
Right.
No. He wasn't a social worker. He was a recipient. He was converted, reformed.
Yeah.
But he testified to what he knew personally, which is that the refugees staffed made up a significant membership of the gangs.
What I notice is that these people get to say stuff like, asylum seekers are all vulnerable and all have been suffered and been raped and attacked and all this stuff. And that's not true. Some of them have. Many of them are just gaming the system, right? That's been proven by the ERSI and various other statistics. These are facts. But yet they're allowed to generalize that way. But if someone says, well, maybe some of them could be an issue with this or that, if it's negative, no dice.
Look, I was foreman of the jury in Letterkenny. There was a case involving a man who cut the head off his wife from Africa. It wasn't the man in trial on Letterkenny, but it was his colleague, and he was a party or accessory in some way or other. In any case, a lot of the crime in Europe at the minute is coming from immigrants. People don't realise what we have here in this country. Well, it's not a perfect society by any means, but if you travel in India, as my daughter has done and described it to me, people dripping with jewels and wealth, stepping over people, dying on the streets, it's a very different society in other places. Saudi Arabia, oh my gosh, some of the stories I've heard about the way immigrant workers from the Philippines are treated by women who are themselves oppressed, it's just unbelievable. And we don't realise we're living in a very defective society, but it's heaven compared to other places. I've been in Andorra. There's a nice little community. There's only about less than 100,000 people, but
that's northern Spain, isn't it?
Yeah, between Spain and France. Yeah. Oh my gosh, you want to visit that and just get the feel of that community. There is really very prosperous too. And Switzerland has several serious defects, but there's a well-organised community. Subsidiarity ranks very high there. There are several referenda in each canton, 26 cantons, like there are 26 counties. Everybody gets their say there,
So can you just, I know what subsidiarity is, more or less, right? And I'm sure most people do, right?
It's decision-making pushed down to the people that affects as far as possible.
And that decision-making is it's quite final. So, you don't just give people a fake say, you give people a real say, right?
Oh, you won't get away with that in Switzerland. The EU has been pressurising like mad, cultivating the journalists and trying to brainwash the people into joining the EU. The EU has a mindset of a homogeneous society where everybody is a unit related to central government. They don't want family, they don't want nationalism, and they don't want faith. They're going to be destroyed if they get their way, and they're doing their damnedest without apology, and they're quite open about it.
I've heard that. Yeah, she said that herself. Family, nation, God, and you mentioned that last night.
Yes, it's a central perspective of the thing, and there is a plan to bring a million extra people to our 4.whatever that they have within 20 years. So this is expanded by another million.
This is Ireland 2040. Most people watching this will know very well Ireland 2040. But so you've basically just explained it there already. But what do you think is behind that?
There's a secular humanist idea that we can live in a man-made heaven, and if we destroy all relationships other than the one to the central, it could be a computer someday, but to a central authority, a political authority, and that will bring heaven on earth, and that will make us all happy. We'll be quite happy to live our lives and go to the ground and go down the tubes, as a phrase from Brave New World, where you're recycled. That ain't for me. Sorry, and I'm not going to accept it. And I don't think Irish people should accept it either. We know better. Sure. Secular isn't necessarily a pejorative word. Secular means of the age. In secula seculorum is Latin for ages of ages, for a long time. Secular means of the here and now. The secular priesthood is the people who deal with everyday affairs like Mass and communion, confession, marriage, baptisms, and all that sort of thing, as opposed to the guys in the monasteries. They're not secular. So what's wrong with secular humanism? Well, humanism is what you had in the Renaissance, marvelous stuff, all that sort of thing. But I put the two together, and you've got a truncated pyramid. We need the top end of the pyramid as well as the bulk of the pyramid. We need the transcendent. That's the opposite of secular. The transcendent is that which is true, whether you like it or not, whether you're black, white, or living in Mars. Secular is the opposite of that. Secular is of the here and now.
So this is God. You're describing why we need God, or the transcendent.
We need the transcendent, and if you start to think about it and thought follows the normal pattern, you will come up with the idea there is a basis for everything that exists. An unmoved mover, as Thomas Aquinas called it.
People, I think a lot of the liberals and progressives fail to realise that a lot of their own beliefs are based on Christian values.
Yes, exactly.
Of course, as is most of the West. But the other thing I wanted to ask you, you're a family man, so you've given a description of your beliefs in the transcendent and your need for it. Family is the second thing Kathy Sinnott mentioned, and you mentioned. Why do we need family?
Oh my gosh.
It's as if it's not obvious, right? But still, in your opinion.
Well, I describe marriage as the press-ganged school of unselfishness. Here's one for you. Press-gang, you know what that was. They did the reports around Southampton and Liverpool and that. But they needed, they needed crew for their warships, the English Empire. And they went into the pubs, bought guys drink. They woke up out at sea and didn't come back for maybe several years. But that was press-gang. It was legal. And people could actually carry a card in those days to make sure they weren't press-ganged. But not many had the card anyway. Marriage is it's like being in the pub, and everybody's buying drink and the crack's good, and likewise you get married and it's good fun and that. But pretty soon the children come along and the worries of this world press on you. You become schooled in unselfishness. Now that is a sine qua non for a civilized society. People have to become unselfish. There's 1,000 rules to observe, and so on, and care for one another, and mind one another, and make sure we don't hurt one another. Well, that is what marriage does for most people. It's been undermined in every possible way, and now we can use and abuse one another, just lift and drop and so on. And when you get on in life, and things don't go so well, maybe health breaks down, and God knows what else, then family is all you have. And it's my conclusion at 70 years of age that the most important thing in everybody's life, indeed at any stage in life, is relationships. And the fundamental relationship is family. And family comes before nationhood, or family comes before citizenship or anything else. We are a nation of families. Families come first.
And excellent. And like in terms of nation, why do we need nation?
Well,
it's an interesting one.
An interesting one. Well, I used to think very much of, I didn't value my Irishness very much. Mind you, my accent, when I went to America back in the early 90s, the guys that I met in the motel put me onto their friends on the phone just to hear my accent. But apart from that.
Yeah, especially even you have a northern accent, right? People like that even more.
For some reason, I'm told that there's an animation firm now in Derry making big money, big bucks, because the voiceover is Donegal. Anyway, no, nationhood, to my mind, I've been in Switzerland at meetings, and I've been elsewhere, and I've been infuriated at the way meetings are conducted in Ireland, where everybody talks over the top of everybody else. And they have the incredible ability, which I don't have, to listen to other people when they're talking themselves. But I've come to actually like that. I think the Irish way of doing things is delightful, even though it's infuriating. And the trouble with Irish people is they're not very good at waking up to what's happening around them until it actually hits them in the shins. But when it hits them in the shins, then they do react, and they react very firmly.
Hopefully we can vote these people out, right? Like, what do you think is the solution to...
Oh, I'm glad you come to that, because that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Of course we can vote them out. There's only two ways of doing things. It's either by force or by the ballot box.
Right.
And the ballot box, it doesn't work by itself. It works because people make it work. And we have to... I'm very disappointed in the meeting in Moville. People were quite happy to shoot their mouth off in all sorts of ways, but they didn't seem to need to be the slightest bit interested in organising to do anything. So it absolutely comes down to organisation. We've got to marshal the votes. And if go back to Daniel O'Connell there, Daniel O'Connell certainly marshalled the votes, and the British government saw it coming before anybody in Ireland saw it, and they tried to suppress it. There's a barrister, he soon changed the name and the article of association, away they went again. But the Irishman is not good at organising, and you couldn't be bothered going to meetings.
It's true.
You know, that's what they do in Switzerland, and they do it very well. We've got a very prosperous country.
I think we need much more of that.
Yes.
People meeting, people talking, people organising, people doing things. You know, for example, with Moville, the idea that and Ruski,
Yes.
and Kenmare and Wicklow,
Yes.
the idea that a deal has been signed by someone else who's doing something you don't like, and because that deal is signed, that's the end of it for you.
Not acceptable. Actually, this is a question that falls into the lap of our hierarchy, our church hierarchy. We're all the church, you know. I'm as much a Catholic as the Pope is, but the hierarchy run the show to a large extent. Well, that has to change. We have to start, taking on board what the laity are saying, and we need to be taught and formed to take part in our society the way the Swiss do, and they have survived 150 years, dragging themselves up by their bootlaces from poverty in the 1860s to a very prosperous country now. Not perfect, as we know, but they do it by being organised and highly organised. And they great respect for one another, and subsidiarity is a big word there, you know, and it really is respected there. But our hierarchy, our churches, I grew up with the idea that politics was for what we called hangmen. I don't know if you're familiar with that word in Cork.
I kind of get the idea, yeah.
And not a hangman, it's worse than a hangman, it's a hangman. And it really rascals went into politics. This was about when I first...
What these days we call them Gombeen men.
Yeah, a Gombeen man's a man who sold his neighbour out, you know. A bit like Soros, that's how he made his money, or his father before him. He sold out his fellow Jews to the Nazis. Did you know that? Yeah.
And he now has a strong role in what's going on now with the plantations and communities like Moville.
This is another plantation of Ulster, in a way, you know.
Absolutely.
We're not going to accept it now, but how soon and how quickly can we get our fellow Irishmen to waken up and start making the sacrifice to go to meetings?
Absolutely. That's like, you know, I was speaking to someone earlier and we were talking about Collins and Pearce and all these types of people would knowingly sacrifice their lives, but people now couldn't sacrifice going to meetings, or my friend on Facebook might not like what I said, or this or that. They can't sacrifice. Nobody's asking for anyone to sacrifice their life, but just a few minutes of your time. Just tell the truth, what you think. And that's the other thing I wanted to ask you. We could have subsidiarity in communities so we could stand up. Right, so Moville could stand up, so Ruski could stand up, but yet you still have the issue of the internal prison, where people can't say what they believe. Yes. So you have people who oppose the centre fundamentally. They may take a few people, they might be happy with that, but they don't want 80 complete foreigners, people that from very different places, with very different languages and religions and attitudes to women and stuff like that. Now,
you want 80, maybe we could 20, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But they'd be willing to moderate it, maybe. But as per the plan, they just don't want it, right? And yet, they have to preempt everything. They say, I'm not racist. Or, I do want them. But, how do people get out of that mindset?
Well, it's really despicable the way some of the people at that meeting last night spoke. They were trying to use our Christian charity, which is very real, still in Ireland, and still very operative. It is one of the most generous places. I always remember the Ethiopia campaign. The Derry Diocese contributed more. Buncrana actually contributed the biggest per head of population, the biggest amount. And the Derry Diocese within the Buncrana within the Derry Diocese, and then the Derry Diocese within. We had the highest per capita contribution to the Ethiopian famine appeal way back in the 80s. But they're using that generosity of people, which is deeply embedded, and it won't be easily rooted out and destroyed. But they were using that against us to destroy us, to water down the makeup of our society, so that religion is no longer there, and want to destroy us by our own Christianity.
Right. There's something perverse about that, isn't there?
No, by others.
Using someone else's morality against them, a morality which you don't even profess to believe.
They're using the refugees as a battering ram. They're being used as well.
Of course. Yeah. And I know in Moville, I've heard that over years, they have had problems with the recession, right? They had a recession. There was a bit of, people were left to rot a little bit. And now it's recovering. But it's recovering, isn't it?
No. The recovery is very, very slow in Donegal. Property prices haven't shifted much here at all. No, Moville's economically in a bad way, but I mean, in our Catholic association that we're trying to get going here, we have an idea which does depend on the Christian take of things on things. It's based on a philosophical idea from a man called Heidegger, Martin Heidegger. He had a big graph or a thing called autochthony, fancy words in the dictionary for rootedness. We have this idea, and we wants to run with it. I actually met Brian Lennon before he died, and he reckoned that it would have potential as a pilot scheme. Autochthony, in virtue of autochthony, you could trust people with a tax holiday for a project, maybe a capital-intensive project, which is pharmaceuticals or something like that. And in virtue of autochthony, you could allow them a tax holiday to get their capital base together. The average investment per job now for an internationally traded product like a pharmaceutical product or something like that, many hundreds of thousands per job. Now that's not going to be able to be given in grants, nor should it be, but it is available in terms of venture capital and bank loans if you had a total radical tax holiday. Now, it's like a walled garden around some kind of plants that are going to be very fruitful given time, but you can't allow the wind to blow them out of the ground before they get started and get established. Likewise, a business needs its capital base. Now, how are you going to prevent that ever being abused? Give people a tax holiday and then they bugger off to the warmer climates, let's say, the Bahamas or something, buy themselves a yacht. But the autochthonous person will not do that. A human being whose whole reference for the value of his life and his endeavour is local, is not typically going to move away. And that's what I'm saying. We have this autochthonous. We were given half a chance here in Inishowen. In 20 years we'd be booming. Just give us a chance to play with autochthony and see where we go. That's Moville needs industry, of course it does, and so does Buncrana here. We've lost Fruit of the Loom, but if the government cared tuppence in Dublin for us, we could be up and running very easily, and the pressure would be taken off the cities. Bursting at the seams.
I know it well. You mentioned Fruit of the Loom. This is a company that I'm 27. I remember it from my younger days. You'd have hats. You lost lots of things made by them. I can't see them now. They're gone, right?
Not hats, t-shirts.
But yeah, I just remember the tags. It's a while back now, but they are gone, right?
Yes.
Right.
Went to Morocco.
What? That's the answer, right? So, I was going to just ask, why aren't they still what they were something 20 years ago? Why aren't they still that? What happened?
Well, it's very common knowledge. The wages in Morocco were a tiny fraction of what they were here. They had, I think they had a total of about 3,000 employed between here and Mallinhead and Derry. They're all gone now completely. They left their factory behind. I bought one of their 100,000 square foot premises here in Buncrana.
It decimates a community, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, it took people out of their education, attracted them into jobs, and truncated their education. My wife and some other ladies started a school actually for kids who were working in Fruit of the Loom, and Fruit of the Loom supported it actually, to get the leaving cert, on a part-time basis. But many of them it did benefit the town, but it was a feast and then followed by a famine. You had many houses got built here as a result of the new employment, but it was a mass production operation.
Irish owned.
Oh no, it wasn't Irish owned. No, it was American owned. Some of them are in America.
Oh, they are.
I forget what part of it is.
North
Carolina.
I do wonder why we can't. I mean, you run, your own business. I do wonder why we can't have more national products. Why can't we rejig our economy so that things like Trump-style protectionism, bad idea or good idea?
I think it's a good idea. There has to be a realistic. I mean, how can I compete making furniture here in Buncrana with people in China who have to sleep in apartments where they take turns in the bed. You can see it if you travel through any of the cities of China, the way people live. And people, people sleep beside the machines in some cases. They've got the best of modern machinery, German machinery and so on. But they're working for I could tell you stories. I've been to China twice.
Right.
It's
not a great
very
place.
hard life for the people. And the Chinese people are lovely. But
sure.
How can we be? It's not a level playing field. Give us all a level playing field, and then talk. But it's not a level playing field. So you've got to look after your own people. And the kind of people who got into power in Ireland. I know Pádraig White, who was head of IDA for many years in the 80s and 90s. They had no time for the idea of progressing the indigenous entrepreneur. He just wasn't interested. Foreign direct investment brought it was a quick buck. But if you do, you're selling your country from under you.
You are, and so it's a quick rush, and it lasts for a while. But so you would say maybe economically to treat the nation as kind of an extended family where
yes,
if
lovely friend.